The office buzzed with the familiar hum of keyboards clicking and phones ringing. Sunlight streamed through the glass walls of the corner meeting room, casting reflections on the polished floors. I sat at my desk, a cramped cubicle squeezed between the marketing team and HR, organizing a stack of project files I had pulled late nights to complete. My fingers moved almost on autopilot, sorting through spreadsheets and presentation drafts, double-checking every detail the way I always did. Had been eyeing the promotion to project manager for months now. Ever since Mr. Hargrove, our director, had announced the position was opening up, I had worked harder than ever, taking on extra projects, covering for absent teammates, and even handling entire client presentations on my own. I barely remembered. The last time I left the office before sunset. It didn't matter. I was ready to sacrifice whatever it took to earn that spot. Then there was Jake. Tall, charming, and annoyingly lazy. He had perfected the art of doing nothing while looking busy. His shirt was always crisply ironed, his smile too perfect, and his desk perpetually empty of clutter. It baffled me how he managed to float through projects, tossing assignments onto others while he lingered by the water cooler, chatting up Mr. Hargrove as if they were lifelong friends. He never missed a chance to slip into Mr. Hargrove's office with 2 cups of steaming coffee or laugh just a little too loud at his boss's terrible jokes. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, work spoke for itself, right? I believed that the one who put in the most effort would always come out on top. But then, one afternoon, everything changed. I was dropping off some project files in the meeting room. Mr. Hargrove liked to have everything ready an hour before his appointments. As I placed the documents neatly on the table, I heard voices coming from his office. The door wasn't fully closed, just cracked enough for the conversation to spill out into the hallway. I paused. I knew it was wrong to listen, but when I heard my name mentioned, I froze. She's good at numbers, sure, but she's disorganized. I've seen it firsthand. Jake's voice slithered through the opening. My heart skipped a beat. Disorganized? I had been the one staying late to fix his mistakes on client invoices, the one who restructured the project timelines when he forgot to follow up with vendors. My knuckles whitened around the edge of the meeting room door. Really? I always thought she was pretty on top of things, Mr. Hargrove replied, sounding unconvinced. Jake chuckled, the kind of laugh that was too smooth, too practiced. Oh, she puts on a good show. But last quarter, remember the Sutterfield project? She nearly lost us the client. I had to step in last minute to save it. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. That was a lie. A blatant, calculated lie. Had carried that project from concept to completion, while Jake had barely shown up to the meetings. The only time he stepped in was to collect the praise at the final review. I didn't realize, Mr. Hargrove said, his voice softer, thoughtful. Oh, yeah, Jake continued, his tone dripping with false modesty. I don't like to say anything, but I really think I could bring more stability to the team. Just want to do what's best for the company, you know. A pause hung in the air before Mr. Hargrove spoke again, this time with more confidence. I appreciate your honesty, Jake. That's what we need around here. Team players who care about the bigger picture. My stomach twisted, a knot of disbelief and rage tangling inside me. I wanted to storm in there and set the record straight, to throw every project file on the table and watch his lies crumble under real evidence. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen in place, the realization washing over me that maybe, sometimes, hard work wasn't enough. Sometimes it was all about appearances and knowing whose hand to shake and whose ego to stroke. When the announcement came 2 weeks later that Jake was the new project manager, I clapped along with the rest of the office, my palms slapping together mechanically, the sound hollow and distant. He accepted the position with that same practiced grin, nodding graciously while Mr. Hargrove patted him on the back like a proud father. I felt my hands tremble, my heart pounding not just with anger, but with something deeper. Resolve. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The rain drizzled lightly against the cafe window, droplets racing each other down the glass pane. I stirred my coffee absently, watching the cream swirl and disappear beneath the surface. My best friend Mia sat across from me, arms crossed and eyes narrowed as she watched me slump further into the wooden chair. "So, that's it?" she asked, her voice edged with disbelief. "He just took it? After everything you did?" I nodded, taking a small, bitter sip. "Yeah. He took it and I clapped for him like an idiot. It's like everything I did meant nothing. Like I was invisible." My voice cracked, and I blinked back the frustration that threatened to spill over. "Mia," scoffed, shaking her head. "You're not invisible. You're just too nice." Her words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. I had been too nice, too forgiving when Jake missed deadlines, too understanding when he slipped out early while I stayed late, fixing the mess he left behind. I had always believed that if I worked hard enough, I'd be recognized for it. But I was wrong. "So what are you gonna do?" she asked, leaning forward, her voice lowering conspiratorially. I shrugged, staring down into my cup. "What can I do? He's the new project manager now. If I say anything, it'll just look like jealousy." "That's not what I'm talking about." Mia leaned even closer, her eyes glimmering with something dangerous, something thrilling. "You could get even." I raised an eyebrow, letting out a soft, humorless laugh. "What? Like slash his tires? Not really my style, Mia." She rolled her eyes. "No, not something petty. I'm talking about taking him down the way he took you down, strategically. If he's as lazy and incompetent as you say, then he's bound to screw up. You just need to be ready when it happens." I paused, letting her words settle like dust in the corners of my mind. Jake always managed to look busy without actually doing anything. He was a master at shifting blame, taking credit, and dodging responsibility. But what if I could catch him slipping? What if I could expose him for the fraud he really was? My hands gripped the warm coffee cup a little tighter. "You think I should build a case?" Mia grinned, a wicked spark in her eyes. "Exactly. Take notes, gather proof, document every little screw-up. When the time is right, you'll have everything you need to make sure he never lies his way to the top again." I stared at her for a long moment, the rain still pattering against the glass. The idea settled into my chest, spreading warmth and something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. I nodded slowly, feeling the corners of my lips turn up. Okay, I can do that." Mia raised her coffee cup, her eyes blazing with approval. "Now that's the spirit. Here's to not getting mad, just getting even." We clinked mugs, the ceramic clattering together like a promise. That night, I sat at my small apartment desk, my laptop glowing in the dim light. I opened up a new folder titled Jake's Truth and began typing. Every missed deadline, every project I had saved, every time he snaked his way into Mr. Hargrove's good graces, I documented it all. I dug through old emails, finding threads where I had sent final drafts, and Jake had presented them as his own. I printed out meeting notes where he had glossed over mistakes that I had quietly fixed. As the list grew, so did my determination. I thought back to the Sutterfield project, the one he claimed to have saved. I spent 3 consecutive nights in the office reworking the entire budget and project timeline after he'd lost track of deadlines. He had walked in just in time for the final presentation, coffee in hand, and smiled like he had built the whole thing from the ground up. And I had let him, but not anymore. Revenge became my fuel. I woke up earlier, stayed later, and observed everything. I watched him swagger into meetings unprepared and rely on others to do his work. I saw the way he manipulated conversations, smoothly redirecting blame when projects lagged and taking credit when they succeeded. I realized I had been blind, willfully ignoring what had been happening right in front of me. Jake wasn't good at his job. He was good at pretending. And I was going to make sure everyone saw it. A fire burned in me now, hotter and brighter than any sense of injustice I'd ever felt before. He wanted to play games? Fine, I'd play too. But I'd play to win. The office had never felt colder. Maybe it was the knowledge of betrayal that sharpened the edges of the air, or perhaps just the clarity of purpose that now fueled me. I wasn't just showing up to work anymore. I was hunting. Jake's office was 2 rows down from mine, a polished glass cubicle with a view of the skyline. He strutted around like he owned the place, his confidence buoyed by Mr. Hargrove's approval. I watched him from behind my computer screen, fingers poised over my keyboard, eyes sharp and unblinking. His mistakes weren't hard to find. They were everywhere, splattered across spreadsheets and buried in email threads like evidence in plain sight. The first slip-up happened during the monthly financial meeting. Jake presented the department's quarterly numbers with the swagger of a man who had done the work himself. But as I flipped through the handout he had provided, the numbers didn't add up. Literally. There were gaps, glaring ones, figures that were clearly estimated, projections that didn't match up with the last reports I had handled. I made a note on my notepad and pretended to listen as he droned on about streamlining efficiency. After the meeting, I waited for the office to clear out, then approached the IT guy, Ben. He was quiet, with thick glasses and a tendency to tap his pen when he was thinking. I caught him during his lunch break, laptop open and eyes glazed over at some gaming website. "Hey, Ben," I started casually, leaning against his cubicle wall. He glanced up, mildly surprised. "You got a second?" Yeah." "What's up?" he asked, clicking off his screen. I lowered my voice. "I was wondering if you could help me with something technical." He arched a brow. "Technical, huh? Like what?" I glanced around, then leaned in closer. "Like email traces, data recovery, finding out if things were edited after they were sent." His eyes lit up with intrigue. "Why? You trying to catch someone cheating?" "Something like that." I forced a smile. "Can you do it?" He tilted his chair back, arms crossing over his chest. "Depends on who and what you're trying to find." I hesitated, then said, "Jake." His grin stretched wider. "In that case, I'm all in." Ben was good, better than I expected. Within a week, I had access to every email Jake had sent. Over the last 6 months, I poured through them like an archaeologist digging for relics. My evenings stretched longer and longer, the hum of the fluorescent lights becoming my only companion as I sifted through files and cross-checked dates. The first real break came when I found a string of emails between Jake and a contractor we worked with. He had requested extensions and billed the company for incomplete work, then deleted the email chain. But Ben had dug it up from the archives, perfectly preserved. I saved everything. Screenshots, printouts, even flash drives tucked neatly in my locked drawer. I created a timeline of his mistakes. The missed invoices for the Miller account in February, the altered reports for the Weston project in March, the budget overestimate for the Peterson deal in April. Piece by piece, I built the puzzle. The real goldmine came 2 weeks later. Jake had been out celebrating with a few coworkers after hours at the pub across the street. I wasn't there, but I knew someone who was. A quiet intern named Sophie who happened to owe me a favor. She slipped me her phone the next morning, her eyes wide as she whispered, "I recorded it, just in case." I plugged in my headphones and listened. Jake's voice, loud and arrogant, spilled through the tiny speaker. "You think I really give a crap about these numbers? It's all just smoke and mirrors, man. You just tell the boss what he wants to hear, pat him on the back a few times, and boom, promotion." Another voice laughed nervously in the background and Jake kept going. "That Sutterfield project? Total disaster. I didn't even touch half the invoices. I just told him she..." His voice dropped, but I leaned in, straining to catch it. I told him she dropped the ball. He bought it. Easy. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking. He was bragging about ruining my work, about lying to get me blamed. My chest burned with anger and something sharper, satisfaction. I uploaded the audio file to my evidence folder. The final piece came just as I was preparing to go live with my collection. It was hidden in the company's budget reports, an error in the financial projections that had cost us nearly $50,000. Jake had blamed me directly during a team meeting, claiming I had submitted the wrong figures. I'd swallowed the humiliation back then, apologizing and promising to correct it. But now, with my access to email logs, I found the original draft I had sent him. It was flawless, numbers balanced, projections aligned perfectly. I compared it to the one he had sent to Mr. Hargrove. He had changed the figures, overestimating profits to make himself look better. When it backfired, I took the fall. I printed it all, the original email, the altered one, and his signature on the final document. It was the last nail in his corporate coffin. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the neatly organized folder on my desk. It was thick now, filled with pages of evidence. My laptop screen blinked back at me, the folder labeled Jake's Truth, glowing softly in the dim light. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. This was just the beginning. The boardroom stretched out like a glossy battlefield, polished oak tables gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Leather chairs were lined, up in perfect symmetry, each occupied by stern-faced executives, their eyes sharp and unyielding. At the head of the table sat Mr. Hargrove, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on his notepad as he reviewed the agenda. I took my place at the far end of the table, unnoticed and unremarkable, a shadow among giants. Jake strutted in moments later, his tailored suit a little too crisp, his smile a little too wide. He greeted the executives with loud handshakes, his confidence radiating off him like cheap cologne. I watched him, my fingers clasped around the tablet resting on my lap, where every incriminating email, every flawed report, and every damning audio clip sat ready to be unleashed. The timing had to be perfect. Jake slid into his chair next to Mr. Hargrove, flipping open his presentation notes with a theatrical flourish. I had seen him do it 100 times before, commanding attention without actually earning it. But this time was different. This time, I held the cards. As the clock ticked closer to the start of the meeting, I opened my laptop discreetly, tapping out a quick email. I attached the folder labeled Jake's Truth, zipped up and encrypted for easy access. The recipient list was short and precise. Mr. Hargrove, the head of finance, the compliance officer, and 2 senior executives from the board. The subject line read, Urgent, Financial Discrepancies and Data Manipulation. My thumb hovered over the send button. For a heartbeat, then I pressed it. The email vanished into the ether, and I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. The meeting began with the usual pleasantries, introductions, minor updates, project highlights. I barely heard a word of it, my mind locked on the moment Jake would stand and take his place at the front of the room. Finally, Mr. Hargrove nodded to him, and Jake rose confidently, straightening his tie as if he were stepping onto a stage. He pulled up his presentation, the screen flickering to life with slides that I knew were riddled with inaccuracies. Financial projections, department expenditures, quarterly growth. It was all dressed up to look pristine, but I knew the foundation was rotten. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake began, his voice smooth and polished. I'm thrilled to present to you the progress we've made this quarter. As you can see, our growth is up by nearly 15%, thanks to streamlined efficiency and optimized project management. I clenched my fists under the table, my eyes locked on his smug expression. The room hummed with approval, executives nodding along, glancing at the charts without a second thought. It was going perfectly for him, until it wasn't. A hand went up. Mr. Bennett, head of finance. Jake, can you explain this surge in revenue from the Sutterfield project? These numbers don't align with last month's reports. Jake blinked, his composure cracking just a hair. He clicked back a slide, his eyes darting over the data. Well, we had some adjustments after streamlining costs, he replied smoothly. Mr. Bennett frowned. Adjustments? I don't recall signing off on that. Jake cleared his throat. Well, they were minor, hardly worth mentioning. Just small reallocations. My lips curled into a smile. The executives were all checking their tablets, scrolling through the documents that I had just sent them. I watched, as their expressions shifted from mild interest to confusion, then to something sharper, something more dangerous. A second hand shot up. Ms. Patel from compliance. Jake, I'm seeing here that the invoices for the Peterson account were logged as paid, but our system shows them still outstanding. Can you clarify? Jake's face paled. He flipped through his notes frantically. That must be a mistake. I'll have that fixed immediately, he stammered. It's not a mistake, Ms. Patel shot back, her voice steady. I'm looking at the timestamp right now. It was logged under your credentials, marked as paid 2 weeks before the transaction. Was even approved. A murmur rippled through the room. Jake's smile faltered, and he shot a glance at Mr. Hargrove, whose face was growing steadily redder. Mr. Hargrove slammed his hand down on the table, silencing the whispers. Jake, what the hell is going on here? These are serious discrepancies. Jake flinched, stumbling over his words. I don't know. Maybe she... He turned, eyes locking onto me, desperation lacing his gaze. Maybe she's been handling a lot of the paperwork. It could have been her mistake. The room turned to me, a sea of judgment and suspicion. I sat up straight, smoothing my blouse and letting the silence simmer for a heartbeat. Then I spoke. Actually, I began, my voice clear and steady. I have documentation to clarify all of this. I rose from my chair and walked to the projector, plugging in my USB. A folder opened on the screen titled Jake's Truth. I clicked the first file, a spreadsheet showing the original unaltered numbers for the Sutterfield project. Then another, a string of emails where Jake authorized adjustments without oversight. Finally, the audio clip played, his voice boasting about how he manipulated the reports and pinned the blame elsewhere. The room fell silent, the air thick with shock and disbelief. Jake's face had gone a shade paler, his eyes wild with desperation. Everything you need is in this folder, I finished, stepping back to my seat. I've been documenting discrepancies for months. I thought it was time everyone knew the truth. Mr. Hargrove stared at the screen, his jaw clenched. Jake, he growled, voice like gravel. My office. Now. Jake stammered, his bravado crumbling. Wait, I can explain. It's not what it looks like, but it was exactly what it looked like. I settled back into my chair, heart thudding with adrenaline as Jake stumbled out of the room behind Mr. Hargrove, the door slamming shut behind them. The executives whispered amongst themselves, some glancing, my way with newfound respect. I had just taken the first step. The HR office was colder than I remembered. Its white walls and sleek glass panels seemed sterile, untouched by the chaos brewing outside. I sat across from Ms. Landers, the head of human resources, her perfectly manicured nails tapping rhythmically on the desk as she flipped through a manila folder with my name on it. So, she began, glancing up over her rimless glasses. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting all of this. I straightened my back, hands folded neatly in my lap. Neither was I replied calmly, though my heart still thudded from the events of the morning. She tapped the folder with her finger. The evidence you submitted is substantial. We've spoken to IT, and they've confirmed that several of the documents were altered under Jake's login credentials, not to mention the financial discrepancies and unauthorized invoice approvals. I nodded, the satisfaction humming quietly in my veins. I just wanted to make sure the truth was known. Ms. Landers studied me for a long moment, her gaze thoughtful. You did more than that. You saved us from what could have been a very messy audit. She leaned back, crossing her arms. Effective immediately. Jake is on suspension pending. A full investigation. His access has been revoked and security is clearing out his office now. A ripple of satisfaction passed through me, tempered by something else. Something colder and more resolute. Good. The news spread through the office like wildfire. I walked back to my cubicle under the weight of hushed whispers and sideways glances. People who had barely acknowledged my existence were now leaning over partitions, nodding approvingly. As I passed, "Hey, good job," murmured Karen from finance as I walked by. I nodded back, a polite smile stretching across my lips. "Did you hear?" I heard someone whisper near the water cooler. She took him down, completely exposed him. "It's about time," another voice replied. "He's been skating by on charm for too long." For the first time in what felt like forever, I walked with my head held high. I wasn't invisible anymore. Jake's office was being cleared out by the time I passed by on my way to lunch. 2 security guards stood by the door as he tossed items into a cardboard box with trembling hands. His tailored suit looked rumpled, his tie pulled loose and his hair no longer neatly combed. He caught my eye as I paused a few feet away, his expression hardening. "You think you've won?" He spat, his voice low and edged with desperation. I tilted my head, offering him a small measured smile. "I think the truth won," I replied smoothly. His fists clenched around the edge of the cardboard box, knuckles white. "You think this is over? I know things too. You're not perfect." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "You're right, Jake. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a liar. And I didn't build my career on manipulation and shortcuts." I gestured to the security guards who were watching the exchange with impassive expressions. "Seems like the truth finally caught up with you." He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, one of the guards cleared his throat. "Sir, it's time to go." I watched as he shuffled out, his box of stolen glory cradled in his arms. It was poetic, really. The man who had strutted these halls with undeserved confidence now walking out with nothing but empty promises and shattered ego. Not long after, a company-wide email went out from Ms. Landers. Subject: Internal Compliance. And investigation update, dear team. We wanted to inform you of recent changes within the management team. Effective immediately, Jake Matthews has been suspended pending an internal investigation into financial discrepancies and unauthorized data alterations. We appreciate your cooperation during this process and remain committed to maintaining transparency and integrity within our operations. Sincerely, Marianne Landers, Head of Human Resources. I read the email twice, the words sinking in deeper with each pass. It wasn't just a victory, it was validation. Everything I had endured, every late night spent fixing his messes, every moment of humiliation when he took credit for my work, it had all led to this. I was still reading the email when Mr. Hargrove appeared by my cubicle, his expression tight but forced into something that resembled a smile. "Got a minute?" he asked, voice softer than usual. I looked up, nodding slowly. Of course. We walked to his office in silence. He gestured for me to sit, closing the door behind us. I settled into the chair across from his massive mahogany desk, the one where Jake used to laugh and chat while I slaved away behind the scenes. "I just wanted to say," he began, adjusting his tie nervously. I'm sorry. I should have seen what was happening. You did good work. I didn't recognize that the way I should have." I studied his face, noting the tension around his eyes, the slight flush creeping up his neck. "Thank you." I said simply, my tone measured and calm. He seemed to expect more, maybe even hoped for some relief from his own guilt. But I wasn't here to make him feel better. I stood up, offering my hand. He shook it, his grip a little too firm, like he was trying to make up for lost time. I appreciate the apology, I said, pulling my hand back, but you should have known better. I turned and walked out, leaving him to his thoughts. As I made my way back to my desk, I felt lighter, stronger. Jake was gone and his kingdom of lies had crumbled. I had done what I set out to do, and I wasn't finished yet. Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office, casting long rays across the polished oak desk. From where I sat, I could see the entire city skyline stretching, out in glittering majesty, tall buildings scraping the clouds, cars weaving like ants through tight grids, and pedestrians dotting the sidewalks below. The view was breathtaking, powerful. It felt like I had finally reached the top of the mountain I had been climbing for years. A knock at the door snapped me out of my reverie. I turned, a smile spreading across my face as Mia poked her head in, her grin just as wide. Well, well. Look at you. Big office, big window, what's next? Your name on the building? I laughed, standing up and gesturing for her to come in. I'm still processing it, I admitted, glancing around the room. Feels unreal. Mia plopped down in one of the leather chairs opposite my desk, crossing her legs. Unreal? You earned this. Hell, you should have been in here months ago. I walked back to my chair, smoothing my hands over the armrests. You know what the best part is? I leaned forward, lowering my voice conspiratorially. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to manipulate. I just showed the truth. Mia's eyes softened and she nodded. The truth is powerful when it's finally heard. I thought back to the weeks following Jake's dramatic exit. HR had completed their investigation in record time. The evidence I had collected airtight. Every discrepancy, every alteration, every falsified document. It all led back to him. Jake had been formally terminated, escorted out for good, and I hadn't seen or heard from him since. What I hadn't expected was the ripple effect. 2 weeks after Jake was fired, the company announced a sweeping overhaul of its compliance and auditing processes. Stricter protocols were put into place, executive oversight was doubled, and a new internal auditing team was created to prevent another scandal. And then there was me. The position of project manager had been reevaluated, and after what felt like an eternity of waiting, I was called into Mr. Hargrove's office. He had been polite, a bit more humble than usual as he slid the official letter across his desk. You've earned this, he had said simply. I had taken the letter, read the bold title printed at the top, Project Manager, and something inside, me finally settled. Like a long exhale after holding my breath for too many years. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence of the office wrap around me like a warm blanket. My office, my title, my success. And I had done it the right way. I glanced down at the small box resting on my desk, the last of my things from the old cubicle. Tucked inside were framed photos, a few notebooks, and a sleek black nameplate. I picked it up, running my fingers over the engraved letters, Project Manager. I set it gently on the edge of my desk, right where anyone who walked in could see it. The metal gleamed under the sunlight, a testament to resilience and the power of truth. Mia raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. To you, for proving that integrity isn't just a word, it's a weapon. I raised my own cup, clinking it against hers. To the truth, I replied, my smile spreading wider. We sipped in silence, for a moment before she stood up, brushing invisible dust from her jeans. You're going to kill it here, you know. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze drifting back out over the city skyline. I know, Mia laughed, tossing me a grin as she walked out the door, leaving me alone in the silence of my achievement. I sat there for a long moment, just breathing it in. I had done it without shortcuts, without manipulation, without selling out my values. I had risen above. My computer chimed with a new email notification. I glanced at the screen. Subject: First project as manager, congratulations on your new role. Attached are the details for your first project as project manager. Looking forward to your leadership. Marianne Landers, HR Department. I opened the attachment, scrolling through the details, feeling a surge of excitement. This was just the beginning. I adjusted the nameplate one last time, aligning it perfectly on the desk. The sunlight glinted off the metal, casting reflections onto the wall. My reflection. And I couldn't help but smile.